Taken from the remastered version of The Lamb Lies Down on Broadway, the 2025 remaster, which is all part of a box set which has been released as part of the anniversary for that album. Planet Rock Studios were lucky enough to have Mike Rutherford, Tony Banks and Steve Hackett come in to talk to Ian Danter about that album and some of the tracks. Over to you, Ian.
Well, The Lamb Lies Down on Broadway is now 50 years young, and to that end, delighted to say, joining me in the Planet Rock studio are 3/5 of the band that made that brilliant Genesis album, Steve Hackett, Mike Rutherford and Tony Banks. Gentlemen, welcome to Planet Rock.
Thank you.
Thank you for being with us, and happy birthday to The Lamb, although it was 1974 strictly. But here we are with this beautiful box set that I saw just the other day that's out now. You take us back to that time, because you'd finished touring Selling England by the Pound. What was the collective headspace of the band, Steve, going into those recording sessions?
Oh my goodness. Well, I think, some albums are a little bit like the Immaculate Conception, or so it seems to me. But I think The Lamb had certain difficulties because Pete was in and out of the band, and I guess on reflection for me, and this is just my opinion about it, it seems as if Pete was functioning with the band pretty much like a solo performer within the band context, but maybe the others would disagree with me.
Tony?
Well, there was more separation on this than in many ways, and we ended up, obviously, Peter was sort of involved in writing lyrics and stuff, so we ended up perhaps doing a little more, the sort of greater share of the music in a way, which was fine by me. I mean, it's a funny album really, because it's not. I wouldn't say it's my favourite album, but I like the album. Don't get me wrong, because I've been involved with one thing that Mike didn't mention. Obviously, one of the main new ingredients on this particular package is the Atmos version of it, which is a sort of new kind of surround sound thing. And during that, Peter and I worked on this together with the engineer when we were down there. And hearing all this stuff again is just fantastic, really. I have a sort of quite admiration, for the band. I think the band's quite good. And Pete's singing is fantastic on it, I think, particularly in things like back in New York City and everything, So much, it's difficult to put yourself back at the time. It wasn't our happiest moment, to be honest. I don't think in many ways Pete coming and going, and generally remember it's just not being a great time. But we had still some great music on there, I think, and it was really nice to hear it again.
Well, there's so many great moments on this record, and there are still songs that you played subsequently live for many, many years, In the Cage being probably as good example as any that stood the test of time.
I was very keen on doing In the Cage when from that album. I felt it was I just thought it would work out of context, very well. And also I think it kind of on Lamb Lies Down is perhaps a little more jazzy, whereas when we did it live, we did it much more rocky, and I really prefer that, really. Brought out sort of elements of it that were really good. I don't know, I think it was a slightly overlooked track on Lamb Lies Down when it came out, actually, and we made it into sort of what became one of our real classic stage songs.
So after the album came the tour, and famously the tour began before the album was even released, so I can imagine there was a degree of confusion amongst certain audiences at what they were being asked to listen to.
Well, I don't know. It was such a day of challenges for me.
Selective memory, I think that. Yeah. Those first few shows, because the audience didn't know it at all, was quite difficult. It's a difficult thing to play anyhow, because we were playing a whole album, and normally the sort of particularly the pianistic sort of tracks, we wouldn't have tried to play on stage, things like Anyway and stuff like that. And, it's a real fight for me all the time, and the whole tour was the way of playing it, I think. And those early shows, having an audience that didn't know the music and really wanted to hear Supper's Ready and The Knife, I think it was quite a challenge. And it was, even after the album came out, people still wanted to hear something else,
But that's the idea of progressive music, isn't it?
Perhaps.
Indeed. But you did, correct me if I'm wrong, but the set list was, you played The Lamb in its entirety, and then you will probably play, Watcher of the Skies and Musical Box to round things off?
I can't remember.
I think that's
part of it, wasn't it? Wasn't it the intro of Watcher?
Yeah.
The last two, or
It's on the album, so if you want to find out...
Yes, there is live
version
material, isn't there?
Is on the whole live tour gig we did in Los Angeles is there, plus the encores.
Yeah.
The encores are done from a board mix, so they're a bit strange, but, you know, it's nice to hear something that was done at the time.
Well, any time I hear Watch of the Skies, I'm instantly terrified. When I first heard that on the Genesis live album, I would have been no more than 10 and absolutely terrified by this keyboard introduction. I thought it was to come with the apocalypse, and not in 9/8 either. It was just the apocalypse was coming.
Oh, right, well, there you go.
But going back to the Lamb, then everything's settled down, you're on tour, and then midway through the tour, you get the news from Peter that he wants to.
It wasn't entirely surprising, was it?
No, it was not surprising actually. No.
But the atmosphere itself in the run-up to that announcement was not too eggy, was it? I mean, you were still, getting on well and performing well, and as you say, getting the reactions you wanted eventually from the audiences, right?
Yeah, I think so. I don't remember it being bad that way.
No, I think it was well received, especially by the time the album was out. And, I mean, it wasn't everyone's favourite. Of course, they wanted to hear other things, understandably, but I think Peter always wanted to go for the new, and still does, doesn't he?
Lyrically, there seemed, you can dispel a myth for me maybe here, Mike, that Peter wanted to get away from the Englishness of the imagery that you were evoking on albums like Selling England and Nursery Crime and Foxtrot, and wanted something altogether more different. So New York City and The Boy became the setting.
And the way it was, I mean, when did punk start in the UK?
Well, 76, that would have been 2 years
after.
after.
That's what I'm trying to say. The point was, to compliment Pete, a New York sort of punk kid, street kid called Rail. I mean,
we started punk.
That's pretty, exactly. It's quite a brave bit.
There's your quote for the
well, I don't think
to go on the interview.
Not musically.
Yeah, but I'm just saying, in a way, it's quite a brave setting, I think, and great actually. Still sort of stands up, I think.
It must be very difficult when, as you've already mentioned, you guys are in one room, you're creating music, you're creating ideas and trying to fuse them together. Pete's in the other room working on lyrics, and it's not never the twain shall meet, but there must be awkward moments where he's trying to fit what he's doing into you and vice versa.
Yeah, well, he tended to be writing the lyrics to existing pieces we'd done. And then we got to the stage where we had a couple of moments in the story that didn't have any music to go with them, and he wanted lyrics and stuff. And so both of those are quite spontaneous things. One of them was the Grand Parade of Lifeless Packaging. I just sort of started playing this sort of kind of slightly jokey sort of thing, and that developed into a song. And the other one, of course, is the Carpet Crawlers, which Mike and I sort of developed a kind of chord sequence, which is a very simple chord sequence, actually. And then Pete wrote this, lovely melody and lyrics on top of it, really.
Yeah.
And that's sort of the most spontaneous piece on the album. And it was probably the simplest and perhaps the most popular too, which perhaps should tell us something. I don't know. I'm not sure we learned from it at the time. But
I hear so many stories of bands who suddenly stumble across a really lovely piece of music late in the recording process when they think everything's done, and then suddenly, within a day, something comes together and clearly Carpet Crawlers.
It was a bit like that. It came together very quickly in terms of the musical end, and then the lyrics. Obviously, Peter was sort of worked on them for a long time and stuff. But it was, it's one of those things that really sort of stands out.